Hey there, folks. Welcome to HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. I'm Tommy Tran with you for the next hour where we're going to tackle FedEx Cup playoffs, Week 0 in college football, and, of course, the NFL. That's where we'll start. Begin with Steelers and Panthers Week 3 of the preseason. Aaron Rodgers will not play in the finale for Pittsburgh as his debut for the black and gold will have to wait. 41-year-old will make that appearance against his old team in the Jets Week 1 at MetLife Stadium. Here's Rodgers' thoughts on his first Pittsburgh camp and final tweaks before the games count.
What do you hope to see out of this final preseason game, final dress rehearsal before it all starts to count?
Health. Everybody getting through healthy. Most important thing.
How do you feel about the work you've been able to get so far leading up to this point?
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel good. Yeah, feel good. Conditioning-wise, body feels good. It's been a good camp.
All right, let's bring in Ryan Wilson and Bryant McFadden. We are well covered from a Pittsburgh perspective here. B-Mac, I'll give you first word. No Aaron Rodgers in the preseason finale. He actually didn't even play for the Jets in 2024. So what are your thoughts on the 41-year-old not participating in any preseason games?
Well, guys, I'm not surprised, and here's why. This is Mike Tomlin trusting the veteran presence that he has in the locker room, starting with this quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. We won't see Aaron Rodgers. We won't see DK Metcalf. We won't see TJ Watt. This is who Mike Tomlin is as a coach. That's why, in terms of just his ability to relate to players, have been oftentimes talked about throughout the entire locker room because he trusts the guys. And not to mention his boots has been on the ground since day one, watching all of those veteran players that I mentioned go to work day in and day out. So clearly he has a good understanding about what this team's look like. He felt like he's seen enough high-level quality work throughout training camp, throughout the joint practices for his starters, veteran starters, to not participate in the final preseason game this weekend.
Yeah, B-Mac, business as usual for Mike Tomlin, and I don't have a lot to add here because we've seen this before, Tommy. But I'll ask you this, Tommy T. Among all three of us that are on the screen, guess which one of us was drafted in the same draft class as 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers and who last summer worked out with Keon Coleman and looked great doing it, but said his check engine light came on. So for the fact that Aaron is saying, you know what, I'll see you guys week 1, I have no issue with that. And I'll let you answer the question, Tommy T.
Yeah, I know that one. It would be the one with 2 Super Bowl rings. That's not Ryan Wilson. It's not myself. By the way, B-Mac, what does it make you do or feel when you're reminded that you were in the same draft class as Aaron Rodgers?
You know what? It makes me feel some type of way in terms of my age, but wisdom comes with knowledge and growth as you get older. And also, it makes me root for Aaron Rodgers even more. Of course, I'm rooting for him because he's a starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he is the last member of our 2005 draft class years ago. And he's still doing it at a high level, in my opinion. So that tells you about the longevity that he's been able to display to be able to still currently be in the National Football League, but not just a clip holder, still starting in the league. That's impressive.
Yeah, B-Mac brought up the joint practices. Rodgers did get some work against Tampa Bay's starting defense, if you want to go that route. At least he faced a little bit of that at some point this preseason, maybe not officially in a game. All right, what about a position battle to look out for when it comes to this team? You guys have actually targeted the same position group, and Ryan, I'm going to give you first word.
Right, and this isn't a situation where Aaron Rodgers arrives in a new town and brings Randall Cobb or Jordy Nelson. It's going to be the same crew that the Steelers had before Aaron Rodgers arrived outside of DK Metcalf, which is a huge addition. But they moved on from George Pickens, so then wide receiver 2 becomes a real legitimate concern. Robert Woods, you see there at the top of the depth chart, he's 33, fantastic blocker. It's unclear if he will make the final roster. The name below him, however, B-Mac, I need to see Roman Wilson continue to do the things we saw in the preseason games thus far. Didn't play for much of last season because of injuries, because if he can step up, and we know what Calvin Austin can do as an undersized number 2 or number 3, that at least gives them some options because we know they're pretty deep at the tight end position, and there's a reason Gabe Davis is in on a visit because he might also be an option because I would imagine Mike Tomlin and Omar Khan are yet convinced that this group is where it needs to be come week 1.
Hey, Ryan, it's obvious that we attack the same position group because that's the most known issue. That's the biggest concern with this entire team. This was an issue last year, Tommy, Ryan. You had George Pickens and who? Who would be a reliable, consistent pass-catching option for Justin Fields, for Russell Wilson? And it seems like we're in the same neighborhood once again. You have DK Metcalf, and then who? when you look at this season, it's not about being the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 for the first month of the season. It's about being able to sustain that level of play to hold those positions throughout the entirety of the year. That's an issue because Pittsburgh, regardless of what you may feel about the organization, they have playoff aspirations. And if you want to make some noise in the playoffs, something they have not been able to do in years past, you got to have playmakers outside of DK Metcalf in the passing game. And yes, you got 2 quality tight ends, but at some point in time, the other wide receivers that Ryan mentioned, someone has to identify themselves as, you know what, I can be a guy. And like you said, Roman Wilson, we've been hearing positive things about Roman Wilson so far throughout camp. And number 1, can he stay healthy? But number 2, can he show up to be that guy they believe he could be years ago when they drafted him, along with some of the other guys you mentioned, right?
Yeah, maybe Arda brought up the double-headed monster at tight end, seeing more Freiermuth and Smith potentially there take place of the wide receiver 2. But it will be interesting how Aaron Rodgers divvies up some of those targets. All right, let's go to the other side of the ball. And it's Bryce Young in this offense. He's not going to play in this finale here. And it's also part of the Dave Canales 180 from last year, guys. We didn't play any of these guys to keep them healthy. This year he said, I'm going to play the first 2 games. Thought about flirting with 3. Ryan, I guess I want you to answer the question here. Have we seen enough from Bryce Young in this offense in 2025?
Tommy, this feels like a therapy session for producer James, who's a Panthers fan. I feel pretty good about this team, if that makes you feel any better, producer James. I think Bryce Young, to your point last year, Tommy, they didn't play. He got benched 2 weeks into the season because things obviously went sideways quickly. It feels like the way he came back the final 4 to 6 weeks of the season, that's the Bryce Young we were accustomed to seeing in Alabama. And I don't think you need him out there taking unnecessary hits in the same way Aaron Rodgers explained it just a moment ago. This offense is better on paper. Now, they have to play more consistently, but that's less about Bryce and more about the young playmakers. Ted McMillan, JT Sanders being a little bit more consistent in terms of the drops. JT Sanders' case being a little bit better as a blocker. Offensive line continuing to play well. But I think this team is positioned to surprise some folks, and I think Bryce Young is going to be the guy to get them there.
The maturation process with Bryce Young has been real pleasant to watch because they were ready to write him off. He didn't write back. And to everything you laid out for us, how he finished the season, they have the utmost confidence that he can lead them into a positive direction. And I love all the added resources they've added to their offense to help Bryce Young evolve and be a better quarterback in terms of the pass catchers. You look at the backfield, the offensive line should be more serviceable as well. So yes, I don't need to see anything from Bryce Young. He's shown enough. The joint practices, he's been doing what he was supposed to do. You look at the first preseason game where we really saw a lot of Bryce Young. He did a great job in being able to orchestrate a scoring drive. I love everything about what I'm seeing from this Carolina Panther team as we see it on paper and from what we've seen throughout training camp in the preseason. Now it's about getting to week 1. Bryce Young, you've done more than enough. Get ready to start your game plan for week 1.
Yeah, just to refresh that timeline, he gets benched. Andy Dalton then got hurt, so that allowed Bryce Young to get back into the fold, and they were in a nice surprise to certainly end the year and to be in a position where we're talking about them potentially being on the up and up. Ryan, this one's just for you. I mentioned Andy Dalton. He's not expected to play. A lot of Palmer and Perkins, more Bryce Perkins, or Plummer, I should say. So what are we thinking about adding the UFL MVP to the Carolina roster?
You hope Andy Dalton gets back quickly because, as the old saying goes, you're only one play away. And Andy Dalton was certainly serviceable and better than that at times when he replaced Bryce Young. And you just talked about it. A freak car accident is what allowed Bryce to get back on the field. So you can never have enough arms during August. But once September rolls around and it's do or die in terms of winning football games, you don't feel comfortable rolling out someone who doesn't lack a lot of reps. And Bryce Perkins played a ton in the preseason when he was with the Rams, but that doesn't necessarily translate. Jack Plummer isn't someone I would imagine you want to go with for 3 or 4 games, should that be the case in the regular season. So Bryce, fingers crossed, can stay healthy. Fingers crossed as well that Andy Dalton gets back sooner rather than later because you can play with Andy Dalton. There are huge question marks with the 2 quarterbacks not named Andy Dalton behind Bryce on the depth chart.
And then, B-Mac, for you, in terms of who Bryce Young's going to be throwing it to, who do you think will be there and who won't be at the end there? Ted McMillan, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, and et cetera.
Well, in the ideal world, I really visualize the Carolina Panthers keeping 6 wide receivers. You starting with T-Mac. You look at Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen. I think Coker makes the list as well. Look at David Moore. I think Hunter Renfrow makes the list also. So my top 6 would be T-Mac, X, Adam Thielen, Coker, Renfrow, and Moore. That's how I see it. Granted, I'm not in the decision-making room, so I don't know. But when you look at what we've seen throughout training camp, when you look at what we've seen throughout the consistency in those wide receivers, I do believe that would be the top 6. Now, who knows? They might not keep 6. They might keep 5. But I think in the ideal world, I see the Carolina Panthers keeping at least 6 wide receivers, a good mixture of youth and experience as well. You look at the big body in terms of the measurables. You got some of the smaller guys in Adam Thielen and Hunter Renfrow, who's making a resurgence back into the National Football League, guys that could command the slot. I think that could be the potential top 6 for the Carolina Panthers. And I think most importantly for Bryce Young, I think he's comfortable throwing the football to any one of those guys that I mentioned, and that's always overly important.
Yeah, and we also learned, of course, they love the running backs there in Carolina as well, so a little bit of balance on that offensive side of the ball. B-Mac, R-Dub, guys, certainly appreciate it. Of course, the preseason game for Steelers and Panthers will be Thursday night, but a reminder about what we've got here at CBS Sports. Week 1, September 7th, we mentioned that Steelers and Jets game. In the late window, a doubleheader which includes an NFC North battle with Detroit and Green Bay.